Rachel Zegler just keeps making things worse with the Walt Disney Company. The more that she tries to defend this movie, the more that she tries to spew her agenda onto the general public, it's only making matters worse. Not just for Bob Iger, but for whatever is left of the image of Disney as a whole.
Jonah Platt, whose father helped produce the latest Snow White film, had some very harsh words for star Rachel Zegler.
For context, Variety wrote a report recently titled "Inside Disney's Snow White Fiasco: Death Threats, Beefed Up Security, and a Social Media Guru for Rachel Zegler." Evie Magazine wrote on X, "When you compare how Rachel Zegler spoke about Snow White to how other actresses who played live-action Disney princesses spoke about their character, really underlines just how poorly she carried herself."
An escalating drama around Disney's rocky live-action Snow White remake just hit a crucial legal crossroads, with Rachel Zegler reportedly rolling up to an emergency sit-down alongside the studio's attorneys. Word on the street, as shared by multiple insiders, is that friction between the star and the House of Mouse has reached a fever pitch. That tension was enough to spark an urgent summons, where she had to face questions about alleged contract slips, potential image blowback, and the looming threat of serious lawsuits.
I am in the thick of rehearsals for Romeo plus Juliet, so I'm going to get out of here. Bye for now. The Variety story notes how a couple of minutes after posting this, she replied to her own tweet and wrote, "And always remember, free Palestine."
Hot off the press, this fresh angle flips the script on a project already weighed down by pitiful box office numbers, fiery social media blow-ups, and non-stop off-camera drama. For months, word on the street has revolved around which party truly takes the fall for the film's staggering failures, as high-level studio executives, key cast members, and even rowdy fans have all been passing the blame around in every direction.
Variety breaks down how after this tweet went viral, the studio was shocked that she would mix a promo tweet with a political statement. As a result, Mark Platt flew to New York to speak with her in person.
Now, Ziegler's emergency meeting places her squarely in the crosshairs of this controversy, sparking fundamental inquiries into how a once promising project went completely off the rails. This sudden turn of events also shines a spotlight on the bigger ramifications at hand, calling attention to the crucial ways this blow-up resonates with both industry insiders and the audience. It underscores just how vulnerable brand loyalty and star power can be when exposed to unrelenting public scrutiny.
Narcissism is not something to be coddled or encouraged. Zegler isn't the only one who has made political statements, though. Her co-star Gal Gadot, who plays the Evil Queen, expressed her staunch support for Israel.
This unexpected legal move arrives hot on the heels of prior insider buzz indicating that Disney was actively exploring ways to claw back losses tied to the film's abysmal box office turnout and shattered standing among critics. Early signals from Disney's camp suggested that marquee stars, including Rachel Zegler and her co-star Gal Gadot, may have crossed a line by failing to meet certain promotional duties or throwing shade at the original 1937 classic in ways that damaged the overall brand.
Snow White's budget was around $240 to $270 million. It has made $43 million domestically so far and around $84 million globally per Box Office Pro.
However, fresh word out of Ziegler's corner suggests that behind-the-scenes sabotage and corporate politicking could have weighed more heavily on the film's downfall than any single actor's public statements. The fact that the actress was pulled into a last-minute face-to-face with Disney's legal heavyweights shows just how heated things have become, possibly pushing the studio toward a tougher legal stance if they can't reach an acceptable deal.
The film received backlash for various reasons in the lead up to its release. Zegler had called the original Snow White movie dated and weird and said Prince Charming was a stalker.
This development also underscores the wide-ranging consequences and shines a spotlight on the pivotal points that reveal how these twists affect both industry power players and everyday audiences alike. It could mark a watershed moment for Hollywood, where major studios and top-tier talent battle for narrative control in the face of towering financial stakes. For Disney, the commercial and reputational dangers couldn't be higher.
Evie Magazine wrote on X, when you compare how Rachel Zegler spoke about Snow White to how other actresses who played live-action Disney princesses spoke about their character, really underlines just how poorly she carried herself.
The original Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs stands as a pivotal milestone in film history, often celebrated for cementing Walt Disney's stronghold in animated filmmaking and kickstarting the studio's golden age. Naturally, anticipation for this contemporary reboot soared through the roof, backed by a sky-high production budget and a star-studded roster of household names.
I'll quickly mention this. The son of Snow White producer Mark Platt, Jonah Platt is the son's name, he is speaking out publicly against Rachel Zegler and blaming her for the film's catastrophic failure at the box office.
The original Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs stands as a pivotal milestone in film history, often celebrated for cementing Walt Disney's stronghold in animated filmmaking and kickstarting the studio's golden age. Naturally, anticipation for this contemporary reboot soared through the roof, backed by a sky-high production budget and a star-studded roster of household names.
I mean, he's totally right. Now, of course, as we covered, the movie is terrible anyway in its own right. It was probably going to underperform regardless. People are tired of the soulless cash grab remake thing.
This move could seriously undermine the time-honored prestige tied to the Snow White franchise. By calling an emergency meeting with Rachel Zegler, Disney seems to be staging a last-ditch attempt to salvage its public image, all while gearing up for the possibility that internal tensions might erupt into full-blown legal showdowns. Moreover, this sudden twist also spotlights the larger repercussions and draws attention to crucial points about how these events affect key stakeholders.
The movie has all kinds of problems that could be pinned partly on the producer, like the producer did not do a good job. Nobody who produced this movie did a good job.
And the audience isn't exempt either. This situation throws a spotlight on the tightrope walk between modern reimaginings of beloved classics and the deep nostalgia that fuels Disney's empire. According to insiders familiar with Ziegler's legal showdown, the actress didn't come unprepared. She rolled in with her own legal team, clearly expecting a heated exchange. Word is, Disney's main issue centers on how her past interviews and social media posts portrayed certain treasured elements of the original 1937 masterpiece, raising red flags within the studio.
Apart from all of the political controversy started by the actress, so the movie had all kinds of problems creatively and conceptually.
Some industry watchers believe Disney might be building a case, alleging that Ziegler's comments, like calling the prince creepy or dismissing classic story elements as outdated, breached a clause requiring cast members to uphold and protect the Disney legacy. However, Ziegler's team isn't backing down. They've fired back, claiming that Disney themselves pushed the cast to lean into and promote the film's progressive spin from the jump.
There's no doubt that she drove the final nail into this movie's coffin. She probably drove the final 2 or 3 nails into the coffin.
This development is sparking the notion that what was once hailed as bold, forward-thinking commentary could now be twisted into a contractual breach at the studio's behest. It underscores the far-reaching implications of the situation, spotlighting key factors that resonate with both industry stakeholders and the audience alike. Moreover, it raises the idea that creative directives can sometimes place performers directly in the crosshairs when a project takes an unexpected turn, all while Rachel Zegler navigates a veritable legal minefield.
And a lot of what you see with Zegler is really just this pretty common Gen Z mentality and approach to work.
Questions still swirl around Gal Gadot, who's faced her fair share of heat for allegedly sidestepping direct questions about the film's controversies. While she hasn't been hauled into a high-profile emergency meeting, at least not publicly, industry insiders are buzzing about whether similar closed-door conversations are underway. Rumor has it that Gadot's contract might come with strict clauses on media cooperation and brand protection, adding another layer to this unfolding drama.
She believes that she should be able to express herself and speak her truth, or whatever nonsense, regardless of the consequences to everybody else.
Leaving the door open for Disney's legal team to potentially go after her as well, for now, Ziegler remains the primary target of the studio's legal examination. This scenario underscores a crucial reality in Hollywood. Even though A-listers wield considerable influence, they are not exempt from a studio's determination to enforce contracts when a project crumbles under relentless bad press. Additionally, it brings to light the broader implications, emphasizing key points that strike a chord with both industry insiders and the audience alike.
In reality, you have a job. You're getting paid to do this job. You signed on the dotted line. You took on the role. You took the job. And that job comes with certain basic responsibilities.
Just like the clash between high-profile talent who believe they acted in good faith and studios determined to hold someone accountable for massive financial losses. Even before this legal summit, alarm bells were ringing in Disney's executive suite, as test audiences noted that the film's modernized tone stripped away the story's inherent whimsical charm. Character arcs had been so extensively reworked that one of the central controversies centered on the complete removal or radical redesign of the dwarfs.
And one of the most basic is the responsibility to control yourself and comport yourself a certain way publicly so that you don't harm the project and thereby harm all the hundreds of other people who are working on it.
Those behind-the-scenes warnings hinted at a bumpy ride ahead, yet few could have predicted the overwhelming backlash that hit once the first trailers dropped. Social media quickly morphed into a battleground, with fans arguing that the new version completely renounced the timeless magic that made Snow White an enduring classic. Some slammed the film's heavy tilt towards social commentary, while others grieved the loss of that cherished, lighthearted old-school charm. Throughout the heated debates, Rachel Zegler's media snippets, seemingly mocking the original film's romantic essence, became a lightning rod for widespread anger.
Because she's not stupid. Well, she might be stupid, but she's not so dumb that she didn't realize that by, for example, coming out and saying that all Trump supporters deserve to suffer.
Those behind-the-scenes warnings hinted at a bumpy ride ahead, yet few could have predicted the overwhelming backlash that hit once the first trailers dropped. Social media quickly morphed into a battleground, with fans arguing that the new version completely renounced the timeless magic that made Snow White an enduring classic. Some slammed the film's heavy tilt towards social commentary, while others grieved the loss of that cherished, lighthearted old-school charm. Throughout the heated debates, Rachel Zegler's media snippets, seemingly mocking the original film's romantic essence, became a lightning rod for widespread anger. They even went so far as to provide talking points that stood in stark contrast to the 1937 classic's take on romance and gender roles. According to these revelations, Zegler believes she's been unfairly targeted for comments she maintained were completely in line with the marketing blueprint laid out by Disney's promotional teams. If that's truly the case, then Disney's move to hold her partly accountable now seems disingenuous. Yet, the emergency meeting signals that if no reconciliation can be reached, the situation could escalate even further.
Disney's Bob Iger says their mission is to entertain, not send messaging as Snow White sales compete for worst performing live-action Disney adaptation ever.
The studio might ramp up its efforts to recoup both financial and reputational losses. This scenario sheds light on broader implications and underscores key points that strike a chord with stakeholders and audiences alike, highlighting the delicate position actors find themselves in when a film's creative vision collides with a studio's need to protect its brand after release. Meanwhile, rumors continue to swirl that the blame game goes far beyond the cast. Multiple insiders have revealed that Disney's leadership was divided from the very beginning over just how much to modernize the Snow White narrative.
Infusing messaging is not what we're up to, Iger said. We need to be entertaining.
One camp reportedly pushed for carving out a fresh identity for the remake, while another warned that overhauling beloved elements, like the dwarfs, the core romance, and that timeless fairy tale magic, risked alienating loyal families. Meanwhile, Zegler herself hinted at executive sabotage, claiming that some high-ranking officials may have deliberately steered the project off course for political or financial gain. Regardless of which side was right, the fallout has been nothing short of cinematic chaos, as audiences found themselves facing a drastically altered story that still carried the revered Snow White label. If clashing executive visions indeed led to the final misfire, one big question now looms. Why are those same leaders leaning so heavily on legal recourse instead of accepting a share of the blame? This twist underscores the broader implications of the situation and highlights key points that resonate with both stakeholders and the audience, demonstrating just how complex it can get when multiple agendas collide under one powerhouse brand. And as if the internal squabbles and fan uproar weren't enough, Disney shareholders are voicing their discontent. Many fear that the Snow White debacle reveals deeper issues in the studio's strategy for remaking animated classics, a profit engine that has fueled Disney for years, worrying that sidelining longtime fans might erode the multi-generational bond the company has painstakingly built over decades. In that context, the idea of holding a high-profile performer like Rachel Zegler accountable isn't just a legal maneuver. It's a matter that strikes at the very core of the brand's identity. Should the star publicly accuse Disney of backtracking on its own guidelines or betraying its cast, the ensuing PR fallout could worsen an already delicate situation. This scenario further emphasizes the sweeping implications and underscores critical points about how these developments affect everyone, from industry insiders to devoted audiences, illustrating just how quickly a treasured entertainment empire can spiral into scandal if it's seen as abandoning its foundational values in times of crisis. Adding fuel to the fire, leaked internal communications have surfaced, painting a stark picture of disorder within Disney's ranks. Some emails reveal that executives had concerns over the film's direction months before its release, suggesting that the very controversies now erupting publicly were both anticipated and left unresolved. Other messages disclose an abrupt pivot by the marketing team when online negativity surged, including orders to downplay Zegler's interviews in promotional reels. Yet, by that time, her image and voice had already become intertwined with comments on modernizing outdated tropes, making her an easy target once the backlash hit. Should these emails come into play during any official proceedings, perhaps spurred by the emergency meeting, insiders believe they might finally clarify just how drastically Disney shifted its strategies and whether Zegler's statements were actually endorsed at higher levels before being cast as a post-failure liability. Once again, the broader implications come to the fore, underscoring key points that echo with stakeholders and audiences alike and suggesting a tangled paper trail of strategic miscalculations and PR disasters. Critics argue that no single culprit can shoulder all the blame for the film's downfall. Instead, it's the cumulative effect of overhauling key Snow White motifs, the Herculean task of pleasing both progressive viewers and nostalgic fans, an oversaturated remake market, and a star-driven marketing narrative that created the perfect storm of discontent. Zegler's personal brand, once celebrated for injecting youthful energy in her breakout role in West Side Story, was intended to breathe new life into an age-old fairy tale. Ironically, that same fresh, candid spirit may have amplified controversies if she was indeed echoing talking points that strayed too far from tradition. Now, with an emergency meeting on the horizon, the burning question is whether Zegler and Disney's legal teams can carve out a mutually acceptable resolution, or if both sides will dig in, risking a prolonged standoff that further tarnishes the film's legacy. This scenario once more shines a light on the broader implications and underscores key points about how this issue affects stakeholders and audiences alike, proving that in Hollywood, creative boldness can lead to either transformative success or catastrophic rejection, sometimes even both at the same time. For fans watching from the sidelines, the entire saga feels jarringly at odds with the idyllic wonder that has long defined Disney fairy tales. Social media has exploded with posts bemoaning that Snow White, once the crown jewel of Disney animation, has now become emblematic of corporate discord and a misdirected modernizing zeal. Some longtime Disney devotees are even calling for a complete overhaul of the studio's approach to live-action remakes, advocating for a return to faithful retellings rather than radical reinterpretations. Others, though more open-minded about evolving narratives, still express frustration over how the film's public relations were managed. Zegler's emergency session with Disney's legal representatives has brought all these concerns to a head. The studio's brand identity, meticulously honed over decades, now hangs in the balance. if Disney overreaches by pinning the fiasco solely on cast members, when it might just as well have stemmed from creative missteps in the boardroom, the fallout could be catastrophic.